I will be acting a little bit like moderator, but Susanna is also moderating. Let's see, moving through the slides. These are the people that we have in the room here. We unfortunately are missing one person who could not make it due to time constraints, which is Dalton Martins. I might kind of channel him at some point because he also had super interesting inputs to give, but unfortunately in Brazil and with childcare, etc., it could not work for him. But we have a selection of people, like this is an all-star panel, it's fantastic, a selection of people here who are either or both maintainers of tools or technical projects in the broader Wikidata and Wikimedia Commons and structured data ecosystem. And also some people who are looking at that a little bit more from a distance, but who are working with this ecosystem in some way, or who have opinions or knowledge about it, who I called respondents, but I think all of us are panelists, etc. I would suggest that each of us, when we talk for the first time, introduce ourselves just in a few words. That saves me time and fits better with everyone's explanation about what they are doing. Just for housekeeping, I do notice that we also have a hands up feature here in big blue button. This environment is super new for me and I think for most of us, so let's see how it works. But I would say we actually will have a succession of small, like mini presentations or just mini stories by everyone. And after each presentation, we can have maybe one question, but then at the end, we will have a broader discussion. If people have questions, feel free to put questions in the chat. And both Susanna and I will keep an eye on those, and I think the other panelists as well, so we can answer as we go. And you can turn on your microphone as well if you want to speak. So the title of this panel is, I was feeling a bit silly when naming it, is Don't Get Hit by a Bus, and that's a reference to, if people are not familiar with it yet, the concept of the bus factor in software development, where you actually do not want all knowledge or crucial skills to be concentrated in one person, because if that person gets hit by a bus, you are in trouble. And let the images load. With another metaphor that we were thinking about when preparing this panel is about the very beautiful, exciting tool ecosystem around Wikidata, which contains hundreds of tools maintained by many people, responsible for a lot of edits on Wikimedia projects, and about the fragility sometimes of this tool ecosystem. And we would like to go from a situation where this ecosystem is not merely a house of cards that we are building, but it's in terms of software development, this is not a good metaphor, it's more like a solid cathedral or a set of pyramids that will stand the test of time, right? Just for context, recently launched the Tool Hub, which makes me as a tool user super happy. Lists, if you search at this point, more than 200 tools that do some kind of editing on Wikidata. And I'm quite sure that not all the tools are listed there yet. But just to give some context, we have a very rich tool ecosystem. At the beginning of the conference today, Vera already gave an introduction with some user scripts, and that already was like a very rich ecosystem, very small scripts that people are using to enhance their edits, but also bigger pieces of software that people are using. And we have hundreds of those, some very heavily used, some more less heavily used. And in terms of how important these are, I saw in the announcement of the Tool Hub itself, something that's a statement which I could not verify, so I don't know how it is actually counted, that up to a third of edits to Wikimedia projects are not done by, using the regular editing interfaces, but through tools and scripts and bots, etc. You can get a bit of an impression of what that number would be by, for instance, looking at special tags on Wikidata, which gives an insight on which tools actually do edits beyond the regular Wikidata interface. And I know that, for instance, for OpenRefine, which I kind of counted a few months ago for a grant, has many millions of edits over time. And if you look here, Quick Statements has 103 million edits. So that's kind of significant. So it's not a small section of edits that we're looking at here. Let's dive into some examples. What is the status of these tools at this moment? What kind of vulnerabilities do we have? What kind of worries do we have about them? I think the explicit intention of this panel is not just to complain about situations, but also to think together about how can we make this better. And I really want to make that point that I want to also ask everyone who presents tools to indicate indeed where there are worries and vulnerabilities, but also what kind of things are you thinking about to make the situation better. I will kick off myself with a tool that I have been working on more in an advisory role. It is the ISA tool, which is not a hardcore Wikidata tool. It's structured data and commons focused. People might be familiar with it. It is a tool to do small-scale campaign-based edits on adding structured data statements and specifically depict statements to commons files. It has been built in 2019 as an initiative of a group of African Wikimedians, Wiki Loves Africa. I think there's going to be a presentation about the tool itself also at another point in the conference here. And it has turned out to be quite popular, not like huge amount of edits, but I would say its importance is more in the kind of organizations that use it. And in the screenshot here, you see an email that I got as, you know, someone who has been working on the tool for a while. I got an email a few weeks ago, like, Sandra, there's a bug in the ISA tool, and we are doing this big campaign with the Rijksmuseum and with Naturalis, which are the two biggest museums in the Netherlands, and it's not working. And actually, basically, the tool at this moment, you could say it's orphaned. And I'm saying this with the biggest amount of empathy that I can. The tool has been developed with a small amount of money as a structured data on commons pilot projects. So it has been developed for pay by Eugene Egbe, an African developer. And you cannot expect from everyone in the Wikimedia developer ecosystem to just have free time available to keep maintaining tools that once they have been paid for. So basically, I know that there is some very small maintenance going on, but like it's really hard to keep track of bugs. And one way that I would hope this could be addressed is because the ISA tool, it's maybe not responsible for like massive amounts of edits, but it's used by important partners in our movement, is that maybe I could imagine that an affiliate at some point would say, we will take over like at least basic maintenance of the tool. We can do bug tracking, we can do like bug fixes, and maybe even, invest some money in further development of the tool. I will keep it at that, and I will give the floor to the next person in the alphabet by first name, which is Antonin. And yeah, the floor is yours to say a bit about where you're coming from. And
Cool. So I can just, I guess, present the projects I'm involved in. So I maintain various tools in the Wikimedia ecosystem. So the main tool that I work on is OpenRefine. It's not exactly a Wikimedia only project, so it's also used by communities who have nothing to do with Wikimedia. And that's the main project I work on. And then I also develop things that live on ToolForge, for instance. So those are maybe more in the scope of this presentation. So I maintain, for instance, the Edit Groups tool, which is this tool that helps you track groups of edits on Wikidata and also more recently on Commons. And then I also run a reconciliation service for Wikidata, which is unfortunately not hosted on ToolForge anymore for various reasons. And so I guess this one is also very well in the scope for this session on the bus factor, because I feel like it's not in a very healthy state with respect to sharing responsibilities and having a sustainable support strategy for it, really.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the vulnerability of, for instance, the reconciliation service?
So it's a tool that is not very visible because it's not a tool that's meant to be used directly by people. So a lot of people use it without realizing that it exists. So it's something that is basically an interface between OpenRefine and Wikidata. It can also be used by other clients. So scripts or other tools or web services can also use this interface to talk to Wikidata. And the thing it does is helping you match data to Wikidata. So given some unstructured data, find the corresponding Wikidata item about it. Because people don't really see it, it makes it challenging to support the tool and find people who would want to also get involved with the maintenance. And it was initially living on the ToolForge, but because it's a service that sees quite high traffic, and ToolForge is not really designed for that, I took the decision to move it out to be able to do maintenance more easily than I would be able to on ToolForge. And so that means it's one more barrier for other people to get involved, because now it's hosted on a private server of mine. So we don't even have the mechanism that the ToolForge provides to have shared ownership of a project or something like that. So yeah, I think it ticks all the boxes of the things that you shouldn't do with a tool. So yes, I think it's a good example.
I do want to ask you another question. You mentioned that OpenRefine is maybe not a good example in this context. I think it's interesting, OpenRefine, because it is basically a tool that is not like per se part of the Wikimedia ecosystem, but plays a role in it. Could you tell a bit more about OpenRefine? Has been around for a long time. So it's an example of actually a resilient tool of how it's financed and how it's managed and what makes it like that. If that makes sense.
Sure. So yes, it is used by communities which really don't do anything with Wikimedia. So because it's a tool that you can use to clean data in general, a lot of people use it really completely independently from any web service like Wikidata or Wikipedia or any other Wikimedia project. And the way it's developed, well, because it's not a web service in itself, it's something that you run locally. It has also got, in a sense, it's a bit easier to keep running because you don't have any hosting costs, or you never need to fix deployment issues as they occur. So yes, it has seen some stagnant stages, so some years where you didn't have much activity, but it was still fine because you could still download the tool and use it on your computer, and that would still work. And for a few years, we've tried to increase a bit the development pace and fix bugs and develop new features. And as part of that, we've started working with a fiscal sponsor called Code for Science and Society. So a fiscal sponsor is an organization that hosts your project administratively and basically manages any funding you could get for the project, and then pays out the people who work on the project. And they also help you, in the case of Code for Science and Society, to actually find that funding in the first place, and to work on the governance of the project. So it's been really helpful for us to join them for that reason, to just basically become more mature as a project.
Thanks for that. I actually tried to invite one person from Code for Science and Society to this panel, but due to the time of this panel, no one could unfortunately make it. But I thought it would be an interesting input for, our thinking about the future of the tool ecosystem as well, that you have instances like this who are actually taking care of open source tooling and do certain things for it, which might be inspiring for our movement as well. Thanks, Antonin. I would say let's move to the next panelist, who is, let me see, that is Kat. I give the floor to you.
Thank you. I'm a co-founder and co-maintainer of ScienceStories.io with Kenneth Sealsnut, who's not in this session today, but later today we'll have another session about science stories, and Kenneth will be there. This is an unfunded project. We started collaborating on this in a research capacity, and then we just enjoyed working on it and enjoyed extending it. And so we started in 2017 and we still work on it, and we've not had funding at any point. So it is vulnerable if either Kenneth or I decide to move on and not work on it anymore. In terms of what we depend on, we depend heavily on Wikidata Query Service and the Wikimedia API. So I guess if our relationship with either of those were to change, that would also really impact the architecture of science stories. And then we also depend on places like HathiTrust and the Internet Archive for displaying content. And so I guess if files were ever removed or those services were no longer available, then that would also impact some of the content that we display in the stories. Oh yeah, I didn't say, Science Stories is a project that allows you to create multimedia biographies of diverse scientists, and it's powered by Wikimedia Foundation projects, mostly Wikidata, Commons, and English Wikipedia. And then in terms of the questions that we were asked about, do we have any requests for or thoughts about how we could make this less vulnerable? So far, things are working well, so we haven't really thought about that. I don't really consider our project vulnerable, but then when I was going through the questions for this session, I realized that, yeah, sure, it is. But I guess Kenny and I both have a lot of enthusiasm for this project. So for right now, we feel happy to keep working on it. And in terms of what the Wikimedia Foundation provides, I mean, we already get almost all of the content from Wikimedia Foundation projects. So as long as the Wikimedia Foundation continues to support the community, and the entire theme of this WikidataCon is about bringing in more contributors, more diverse contributors from all areas of the world, and that will definitely help science stories, because we're always looking for people who are contributing diverse content that can then become a part of these stories. And so the more diverse participants we can have contributing to our projects, I anticipate that would be beneficial for science stories. Thanks.
Thanks, Kat. You mentioned at the beginning that it was born out of a research context, or maybe you said it slightly differently. Has there ever been like a connection of science stories with the university department in which you worked, or any support from that side? And or would that be something you would find valuable, or not at all. I'm just curious because sometimes I hear that certain projects are under the umbrella of university departments or study groups or whatever, and that can be good or that can be bad.
We don't have any affiliation like that. Kenny and I did meet when we were both studying at Yale, and Kenny did use science stories as his senior project in the computer science department. Kenny is the software engineer who built science stories, and but that wasn't an official relationship. It was just basically his senior project. We would be open to it, but it's not something that has ever come up.
Yep, thank you. That brings us to our next speaker, who is Lucy. And let me jump to your slides. Here we are. Go ahead.
I've seen most of the people in the chat know me already. I'm Lucy. I usually talk about the article Placeholder, which is a project we started when I was a baby Wikimedian in 2016. And back then was part of my undergrad thesis. I've just finished my PhD, so that has been a very long time. And basically, it's the whole idea.
Am I the only one not hearing Lucy anymore?
Yeah, I lost the sound as well.
Try again. You are now muted.
Muted.
Now I should be working. Yay! Okay, I'm working. I'm in Copenhagen now, so I don't know why my internet is terrible, but it is. So anyway, generating placeholder pages from Wikidata for Wikipedia, and we focus especially on low resource languages, which then therefore also brings the problem that those pages are super visible if you are an editor of those low resource languages, which is typically not where we gather our technical community from.
I think we lost Lucy. I also had a warning about my own connection, which kind of gives me the creeps. I would say if Lucy does not come back quickly, we can move on to a next speaker and then give her the floor later, if that makes sense to people. I see her appear again.
Yeah, I think I'm just phasing in and out. I'll try to make it very short. I think the main problem I have is the project has been inactive. The main people who see the project, which is very visible, don't get to.
Yeah, let's give it one more try. Maybe if you turn off your camera, I don't know.
I'll try like that.
Yeah.
If this time I fall out, then just move on to the next slide, I'd say.
Yeah.
So we aim at editors of lower resource languages, which is not typically the technical community, and my internet broke again.
Seems you are still on though.
Okay. Does Okay.
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so the tool itself depends on a lot of Wikipedia functionality. So the search in Wikipedia, when it changes, the whole tool breaks, or the extension in that case. So that has been always a huge struggle with the article placeholder, I would say. And there has been a lot of interest from the community at large, but I think there has been very little pickup on the technical side. So I do go to conferences where people know the tool, and I don't know them, which is an amazing feeling. The other person who was heavily involved in this was Marius, who also was mostly there back in 2016 when we developed the tool. And supported on the technical side. And I think both of us kind of moved on. I tried to pick the article placeholder up later in my research work, but it never had a structured development anymore and maintenance. And I think there are a lot of things to be maintained and picked up and improved that just never got the time, basically.
I see. I just want to say that there's a lot of praise for your work in the chat. So go there and get warm fuzzies. Yeah. Is it still actively deployed on you?
It is still active on 14 small Wikipedias.
Yeah. Catalan. Yeah. I am aware of I think the Papiamento Wikipedia is also interested in it. So yeah, it's something that is wanted, but could use more love, I can assume. I would say let's move to Susanna, and let's hope that Lucy succeeds in getting back for the discussion later. So Susanna, I will give the floor to you now.
Yes, thank you. Well, if you can you refresh the slide? I put a picture there, so.
Oh, yeah, did you? Let me see, just a sec.
Well, yes, hello, I'm Susanna Ånäs, and I'm from Avoinglam, Helsinki, Finland. We have a group that connects the work of open knowledge, Wikimedia and Creative Commons. And I have done projects in my capacity as the GLAM coordinator in Wikimedia Finland, and as a contractor to Wikimedia Finland, and as an independent developer, or like a creator, project participant, group participant in a project, and then independent, well, funded by a Wikimedia project grant, as well as then in a Wikimedia related project with funding from outside Wikimedia. And actually then I would like to, well, there are all kinds of challenges with all of these. And I think, well, what is maybe most striking is that even larger projects than what I have worked with are facing the same problems. And I think the biggest challenge seems to be that there is no continuity and that there is no adoption of the projects that have been started. And I would maybe like to vouch for like broad support for experimentation, which would not necessarily require sustained support. You know, kind of, well, this isn't the Sphinx, so I should have maybe added the pyramid. So a kind of a pyramid structure, that there would be like a broad support for lots of experimentation, and then like a few projects that are considered vital to the functioning of the community in their most important activities to support the projects themselves. So, but in general, I would like to see a lot of activity and enjoyment in participating in development projects across these projects. So I think this is maybe to put it in short, and I can add some details about different projects maybe in the discussion. I didn't mention the projects. Like in 2014-15, we worked on the Wikimap's Whopper, which is a version of the New York Public Library Whopper that was modified to work in connection with Wikimedia Commons. And then Glampipe was started in 2015 with the Finnish Ministry of Education funding, and continued within Wikimedia Finland, and continued with project grants afterwards, and it was never finalized actually. And I mean, the very special case as a next version of Glampipe is being presented today by the original developer Ari Haurinen later in the afternoon. So that work he has done has been done independently by him and in his context with his current job. So it has moved on from being first initiated by us. And then Wiki Documentaries is a project I have initiated completely outside Wikimedia structures within Open Knowledge Finland, and funded by a Finnish independent cultural foundation funds. So, but more details, I'm happy to discuss them later.
Thank you, Susanna. Yeah, I think this is kind of finishing the round of presentations that we've had from people who represent tools and represent technical projects. We also have some people in the room who are more coming from organizations within the movement who are looking at this tool ecosystem and also at movement strategy, Wikimedia movement strategy, and the future of the Wikimedia movement in various ways. And I'm wondering if each of you have any response to what you've heard so far, or anything you would like to add to the discussion. I don't know, we had also in alphabetical order of first names. That's how we ended up organizing this panel. We have Alicia first, and I see that you raised your hand. I can assume that that is also because you want to say something.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Alicia, and I work at Wikimedia Sweden. I'm a developer, and we are actually running a big project right now. We are developing a thematic hub around the content partnerships, with the goal of taking a more central coordinating role in the Wikimedia ecosystem around different types of content partnerships with GLAM institutions, with NGOs, putting data on Wikimedia Commons and on Wikidata. So obviously, the tool ecosystem is something that we are looking very closely at, and it's also something that we know that it has to be improved. You mentioned, Sandra, the ISA tool, for example. It has to be improved. There are bugs. The underlying framework doesn't make the interface easy to translate to other languages, for example, which limits very much how we can do outreach with it to communities that don't use English or French. And I'm happy to say that we are actually looking into continuing the development of the ISA tool in Wikimedia Sweden. So hopefully it will be more user-friendly and less buggy and more powerful, because it really is a great tool to introduce people to structured data on commons in a very, very simple gamified way. But yeah, a very common thread I see in these discussions is that, and also what I'm saying in the chat, is that people don't feel appreciated when they make contributions to the Wikimedia projects, if the tools can just disappear, or if they're not developed. And it's also, there's also this internal barrier. Do I really want to invest my time into learning this tool if I don't know how long I can use it? And from our content partnerships perspective, this is also a very big barrier to working with GLAMs, for example, because we would love to equip GLAM institutions with tools that make them into independent Wikimedians on their own, so that they don't have to rely on us to make contributions to the Wikimedia projects. But like the Wikimedia ecosystem doesn't seem like a serious partner to work with if there's like a dozen of tools and each does a tiny thing. They are hard to find. The documentation is not easy to understand, and then they just stop working. Like an example that I'm dealing with right now is Pattypan, which is an amazing tool for batch uploading media to Wikimedia Commons. And we have invested time into teaching Pattypan to a group of GLAM professionals from several museums who are really eager, and they really want to learn, and they really want to work with Wikimedia Commons on their own. But in the last weeks, there have been problems caused by some sort of change on the Wikimedia servers that make it impossible to log into Pattypan. And since it all relies on the work of a couple volunteers who work on it in their free time, this is a really big barrier for the Wikimedia movement to be like a partner that is taken seriously.
Thanks, Alicia. I was actually going to mention, like, hey, Pattypan is also a problem at this moment, and you brought it up yourself. I'm super happy that you're indeed looking at in the direction of the ISA tool. What I remember from thoughts about the thematic hub is, when I still worked at the foundation, we also had conversations about it. They went a bit more in the direction of really software support, and now it's also going more in the direction of more socials, like tech, yeah, more like like social support of the movement. There's both components to the picture, right? So yeah, I'm not super up to date on how movement strategy is thinking about that, and the community at large is thinking about whether we would like to have one organization in the movement taking care of these things, or multiple organizations should work together on this. I think that's a really open question, but I'm really glad that at least Wikimedia Sweden is looking at this specific case, because that's super helpful already. I would like to give the floor to Birgit at this point.
Thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Birgit, Director of Technical Engagement at the Wikimedia Foundation. So Technical Engagement is an umbrella team for the subteams Wikimedia Cloud Services and Developer Advocacy. On the slide here, you can see some of the services and programs we are supporting. One of them, the core piece of course, is Wikimedia Cloud Services itself, the hosting environment for tools and bots. Recently we released ToolHub, which is a community managed catalog with the aim to catalog all of Wikimedia's tools that are not MediaWiki, basically. And another project that we are supporting is PAUSE, our Jupyter Hub deployment, which is also very relevant for Wikidata community. I think the theme of this session is really core to many of the questions that we have as well. And tool sustainability is something we talk about a lot, and we try to build programs towards. And ToolHub is a recent example for that. And it's inspired, I would say, by questions like, how can we make tools discoverable in the first place? And then how can tool users and tool maintainers find answers like, is this tool maintained? For what type of workflows is that tool useful? Is the source code published? Where do I find the documentation? These type of questions. Because one thing that we notice is that it's super hard to answer that question, right? From both perspectives, from a perspective of a tool user and the community who wants to decide, should we use that tool for our core workflows ABC? And also from a tool maintainer perspective in terms of, should I build a tool around this workflow, or does it exist already? Is there any project I can join, and which ones would be attractive for me because they're written in the program language I'm a fan of, or they seem to be a nice collaborator, these type of questions, right? I think a core piece of that is really helping communities at large making these decisions better, and also start thinking about what are signals for quality and what are signals for sustainability and reliability. Because in the end, if your community depends on, let's say, a major bot that that does key workflows of a wiki, and that bot has only one maintainer and the source code is not published, when this community is at risk once that maintainer is not available, right? And we should start thinking about how can we avoid that, and how can we learn better, recognize what is needed to avoid such bottleneck situations. And I think many of what people said before resonates with like the problem space that we are describing here. It's generally not easy to find to avoid these bottlenecks, right? To find people who want to contribute, who also it's a capacity issue. We have so many tools. ToolHub shows just like, I think, 1,600 right now. That's by far not all the tools because we're not yet catalog guys in the catalog. So this is really a lot. So, and the question of sustainability, I think it comes from two sides. It's like on the one hand to allow from a technical side to collaborate better, but it's also a social question, right? Like I think there's a common misunderstanding that you just need to throw a pair of hands on the code base and it will work out. But in the end, it's also about, is that fun? Because this is a volunteer project, right? Is it fun to work with the other people? Is it a good experience? Do I want to collaborate? Do I find space for my own ideas, or is there already a very strict roadmap for the tool in question, right? All of these questions make it more fun, but also more challenging to approach, right? Like, and I think answers that we're looking into are on multiple levels, on technical and on social sides. Like on the social side, like how can you connect people with each other? How can you create experiences where it's actually fun working with each other, like hackathons, but also recognitions like awards and other ways to showcase what the community is doing and to find people to work with you and also learn about what tools you can use, right? And so these are some core questions that we have in mind. And I think like on the way forward, it's really, I really like the ideas about the hubs, for example, that we have more special interest groups for certain types of tools or workflows to build better capacity around these, right? And build a subject matter expertise around these. That's a really, really great idea. And one last thought on that, I think like for us, for my team, tech engagement at least, and I think that's a common ground in the movement, is it's really about working together with others. Most of our projects wouldn't work if we just would do them on our own. So this is really about work with people and find the connecting dots, right? Work in networks. For example, ToolForge adminship is shared between staff and volunteers. One example, right? And I think that model, to drive that model forward and really make this a common project is what we would like to do and what want to bring to the movement. Yeah.
Thanks, Birgit. I have to say I was personally super happy to see ToolHub as a Wikimedia Foundation initiative, because it is a signifier that, actually the foundation is looking at the tool ecosystem and is helping us to make sense of it. I just want to give a plug for, I think yesterday, Jean-Fred got in touch with me like, Sandra, you're doing this panel and I'm inspired, and I had all these thoughts lined up already. Jean-Fred has written a blog post. It's just maybe a tangential thought, but I think we can use more creative thinking also in this area of what the role can be of maybe non-technical people in the space, of not just being end users of the tools, but also helpers, at least. Jean-Fred, I'm trying to paraphrase now your blog post here. I just want to flag that you might have seen it already. And maybe we need more of that brainstorming in this direction of how can we help each other more, and also people from non-technical backgrounds, how can we be more helpful to this whole ecosystem. Lastly, but not least, I would like to give the floor to Kim, who I've known as my former manager at the foundation, but who now has also moved into movement strategy. And Kim, I'm super curious about your perspective on this whole conversation, and you're at the end, so no pressure.
Good. Hi, hello. I'm also very curious about your perspective, so we're in a good start. So my name is Kim, and yes, I coordinate the movement strategy and governance team at the foundation, and we are in charge of facilitating the movement strategy implementation process. I say facilitating because we don't implement a thing, actually. This is up to the rest of the movement, including all of you probably, in a way or another. Of course, one link here, movement strategy. I saw this question in the description of this session. Does the movement strategy process offer tools for taking up this challenge? And the answer is yes. Then I realized this was a bit of an unclear intro, so I decided to think a bit, actually, how to explain the movement strategy process to Wikidata people. And actually, I think probably the Wikidatans, if that's the name, I think you are the best positions to understand what's happening with movement strategy implementation. Let me give you an example, actually two. I want to celebrate today with all of you that 9 years ago, exactly on this day, Mount Everest was instantiated on Wikidata. Great, 9 years ago, like 29th of October, no Mount Everest, 30th Mount Everest. What's funny though, is that during 3 days, Mount Everest was not a mountain, because the mountain item would be only created 3 days later. What does this mean to, okay, fun story, etc. But what's the relation with movement strategy? So movement strategy, just like Wikidata, is also organized on properties, so to say. So we have movement strategy, so we have the strategic direction. From that strategic direction, you get a set of movement strategy recommendations. And out of those movement strategy recommendations, you get movement strategy initiatives. And any projects related to actually implement movement strategy need to be tied to one of those initiatives. So just like Mount Everest was during 3 days a mass of something with some hate floating in the air, until we told them you are a mountain, so we grounded it on the on the ground. Similarly, any potential activities and projects supported by the movement strategy implementation process need to be grounded on something, and that something are initiatives. So I'll give you an example of a good Wikidata project. Let me bear with me. This morning I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to have an atlas of the universe based on Wikidata? You know, it would define the location of all known stars and planets in real time. It would just provide the duration of the orbits of all known objects, and all this, you know, through algorithms and whatnot in real time, and then others could just have this data. Amazing, no? It's universal, doesn't depend on cultures, languages. Great project. Well, if my technical knowledge is good enough, someone like Lydia or any of you would come to me and say, well, Kim, good idea, but you know what's the problem is that right now we don't have a data type for astronomical locations. Also, we don't have a data type for duration of time. And that's a problem for your project. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you know, I just want to do this atlas. And yes, I understand. But first, you or someone you know would need to fix the data types. And I'm like, data types? I don't care about data types. I care about the universe. So this is the situation where many of you might find yourselves in the movement strategy right now. So for instance, Wikidata, tools. Well, these are not properties that I can go now to the movement strategy recommendations or the movement strategy initiatives and say, oh, yes, look, Wikidata is here, initiative 27, go there, work there. Still not there. Someone has to glue something specific as Wikidata, or specific as a tool or maintenance of tools or processes to, all these, think of all this as properties or as items, and you need to glue, find where to glue all these points with the status of movement strategy today. I try to do a bit of homework and see what would be the gluing points today to start. So to help you a bit, there's the movement strategy. Also, last week we just launched movement strategy implementation grants. So there's several recommendations where there's a lot of Wikidata or data flavor, and some might want to look at it. So as part of the Improve UX recommendation, there's something called Cross-Project Tool Development and Reuse. That's the title. Sounds related to all the things you are discussing. I don't know exactly how it plugs today, but someone could start working on the bridges there. In Innovating Free Knowledge, there's an initiative about continuous experimentation on technology and partnerships for content, formats, and devices. Same thing, doesn't say Wikidata anywhere, but come on, sounds a lot related to the work you do. And then there's recommendations about identify topics for impact and others in general. So while I don't think that today the movement strategy process has a reply for this session that you can just walk and get something running, I do think that yes, that ultimately the movement strategy implementation process should work for all the interesting and strategically aligned parts of the movement. And clearly, Wikidata and surroundings and all these tools are at the edge, almost, I would say, of where the Wikimedia movement wants to be by 2030, which is the whole point about the strategy. Anyway, I could keep talking about this, but I'd rather stop here. And I hope I have made my case in Wikidata terms of what's the point of complexity now and how to bridge from the current situation of movement strategy to the point where any of you developing your tools can just benefit directly from the support we want to provide.
Thank you, Kim, for that overview. I was not aware about these grants, so I will definitely take a look at that. This looks quite promising. I think also I hope just bringing together this panel, I see that we have 61 participants in here and many people coming to this panel with enthusiasm is also a sign that we want to align thoughts on this, and stuff is already happening at Wikimedia Sweden, for instance, and with ToolHub, with the Wikimedia Foundation also taking things in hands. I'm looking at the time. We actually have 1 minute left before we actually have to stop. And I saw that in the chat, there was also super active conversation going on, which I personally couldn't keep a lot of track on because I was really with a lot of focus listening to everyone in the panel here. Anyone who has any final thoughts or I have the feeling that many of us have very strong feelings about this and that we should continue this conversation. I also put this in the panel description, and I think we are already having this conversation, but through many different channels and sometimes one-on-one. And I don't know, anyone has any thoughts on this? I know that, oh, wow. Just let's end by this beautiful kind of shared, oh, wow. Shared like Scratch document that Andrew has also created. Can we do something like this, but also in conversations and talking together more? And would that be some, who could take initiative for that? Maybe Wikimedia Sweden, or I don't know.
I think it would be a good idea if someone in the audience, in the community, would like to step up with ideas for continuing discussion.
Mm-hmm.
think it only takes to open the mic. But maybe if not anything else, there should be maybe some channel on Telegram that we should point people to. And well, any suggestions? I have hundreds. I cannot choose.
I can imagine that indeed the Telegram group is a start where we start brainstorming. We have the Etherpad, which contains at least a summary and probably also names of some participants here. Yeah, I know I'm passionate about this, so I will not stop talking about it and bugging people. So, and so will you, Susanna.
Let's start a new one, just to make it difficult as possible. So from now on, there will be a channel called Don't Get Hit by a Bus.
Or something.
Yeah.
We will invite people and
yes,
continue there. Thanks, everyone. Let's give the floor to the next speakers. Thanks, awesome panelists, and we will be in touch. Telegram Toolmakers is Hai's suggestion. Yeah, the bus name is maybe a bit strange.
Okay, yes,
we will figure out a good name and you can change names.
Okay, that will appear today.
Cool.
Anyway.
All right.